The curse of St. Mary's Convent. Kolkata's St. Mary's Sacred Heart Church wasn't just a holy place of worship. It also served as a hostel for young women who wished to dedicate their lives to divine service. These girls had renounced worldly pleasures to serve Jesus and humanity. Before being accepted as full-fledged nuns, they spent several years here, learning discipline, devotion, and sacrifice. It was the last Saturday of March. Evening prayers were underway when Mother Agnes, the head of the convent, introduced a new girl to everyone. "This," she announced solemnly, "is Maria, the Lord's chosen child. Like you all, she was not born for worldly indulgence, but to serve in the light of God." Maria bowed slightly, her face pale and lifeless. She neither smiled nor made eye contact with anyone. Without a word, she quietly walked away to her room once Mother Agnes finished speaking. "Did you notice her?" whispered Ruma to her roommate Monica. "Something feels strange. She looks forced to be here. There's something in her eyes." "Shoo," Monica cautioned. "If Mother Agnes hears you, you'll get in trouble. Forget it. If anything's wrong, she'll handle it." A whisper in the dark. The next morning, during prayer, Ruma noticed Maria standing at the back, murmuring something under her breath. Curious, Ruma stepped closer. What she heard made her blood run cold. Maria was muttering in a deep, masculine voice. "God, what was that?" Ruma thought, her body trembling. That night, unable to contain her curiosity, she crept to Maria's window. Peering inside, she froze in horror. Maria sat twisted in an impossible posture, her limbs bent grotesquely, her head tilted unnaturally to one side. She looked less human and more like a broken doll. Suddenly, Maria's head jerked toward Ruma. Her eyes were sunk deep into dark pits, her face pale and streaked with black veins, her teeth black as burnt coal. That Ruma's scream shattered the silence. Within moments, Mother Agnes and the others rushed to the spot. They found Ruma on the ground, gasping in terror. The demon within. Father Steve, the priest of the church, arrived immediately. Seeing the horror before him, he ordered Maria's room sealed. "No one goes near her," he warned. "This is not of man. It's the work of something unholy." The next morning, Father Steve gathered the nuns outside Maria's room for collective prayer. He entered holding a crucifix and holy water. As the others chanted, Maria shrank back, clutching her ears in agony. When Father sprinkled the holy water, she screamed, collapsing violently to the floor. Blisters appeared where the drops had touched her skin, as though she'd been burned by acid. Finally, she fainted. When she awoke hours later, Maria seemed calmer, weak, pale, but no longer possessed. For 2 days, she lay silently, neither eating nor speaking. On the third day, she asked for water. By evening, she had begun eating again, ravenously, like someone starved for years. But her behavior soon turned strange once more. She started muttering in multiple languages, one she could never have learned. "She's not herself," whispered Monica. "No ordinary girl can change voices like that." Mother Agnes realized then that Maria's torment was far beyond their control. "We'll keep her until Friday," she said gravely. "Then Father Edmund must take over." The exorcism. 3 nights later, Father Edmund arrived. Late that evening, the exorcism began. Maria was tied to a chair surrounded by candles and crucifixes. As the priest chanted sacred verses, Maria laughed, a chilling sound echoing from multiple voices at once. Suddenly the candles blew out, and the floor between the priest and Maria cracked open. Maria screamed so loudly that the walls trembled. Then Mother Agnes's eyes turned jet black, and she began to speak. "Possessed, let me go," she howled. "I'll tell you everything." She confessed that a year earlier, Maria had fallen in love with Father Neil, a young priest at City Church. Against his vows, Neil had secretly begun a relationship with her. When Maria became pregnant, Neil panicked. He sought help from Mother Agnes to cover up his sin. Under Agnes's guidance, a nurse named Julie was brought to perform an early delivery, without Maria's consent. On a stormy night, Maria gave birth. The baby cried alive. But Agnes ordered Julie to bury the infant in the churchyard while Maria was told it was stillborn. They thought the secret had died that night. But guilt doesn't stay buried. Maria soon discovered the truth. Betrayed and broken, she began visiting the grave every night, calling out to her child. Something dark had answered. Retribution, the spirit that haunts her, Father Edmund realized, is not just demonic. It's her child's restless soul seeking vengeance. The priest intensified the exorcism. Maria shrieked, twisting her arm until the bone snapped. "Call Neil," she screamed. "Only then will it end." Neil was summoned. As soon as he entered, Maria's laughter filled the room again, harsh and mocking. "A father, one punishment," she growled. Part 2. The return of the unholy weeks had passed since the tragic night that sealed the fate of St. Mary's Sacred Heart Church. The doors were locked, the bells silenced, and the once holy halls stood drenched in shadows. The government had declared the site unsafe, but locals whispered the truth. No mortal hand dared step inside again. Yet, evil never dies where sin has taken root. The haunting begins. Father Edmund had returned to his small chapel miles away from the city, but peace eluded him. Every night, he dreamed of the same thing. Maria, bound to the chair, her eyes rolling back, whispering in a voice that was not hers, "Father, the child is still here." One evening, he received a letter, and signed, smeared with candle wax and red stains that looked eerily like dried blood. It read, "They lied. The child lives beneath the altar." Edmund's hands trembled as he reread the words. "Impossible," he muttered. But deep inside, he knew the evil hadn't been buried. It had only been waiting, haunted by guilt. Father Edmund decided to return to the ruins of St. Mary's. The night he arrived, a storm raged, thunder rolling like the growl of the damned. Inside, the air was thick with decay. Candles from the exorcism still lay melted across the floor. The scent of burnt cloth and holy oil lingered as Edmund walked deeper into the sanctuary. He noticed something new, faint lullaby-like humming coming from below the altar. With each step, the voice grew clearer, soft, melodic, yet sorrowful. He pulled the altar aside and found a hidden stairway leading underground. The steps descended into a crypt no one had spoken of before, filled with forgotten coffins and murals of angels. Now blackened with soot, at the center of the room lay a small stone coffin, the name engraved, "Maria's child, born and buried, March 3rd. Edmund fell to his knees. "God forgive me," he whispered, but before he could pray, a faint cry echoed through the crypt. It wasn't the wind, it was the cry of a baby. The coffin began to shake violently. The lid cracked open, and a small, skeletal hand reached out, clutching the edge. Edmund stumbled backward, clutching his crucifix. "Begone, unholy one," he cried, sprinkling holy water. But the water boiled upon contact. The shadow rose from within the coffin, the form of a child, wrapped in dark mist. Its voice echoed with rage. "You buried Malieve, Father." The shadow lunged at Edmund, its touch freezing the very air. He screamed, reciting prayers as the spirit clawed at his soul. In desperation, he flung his rosary onto the ground, and a bright light filled the crypt. When the light faded, the spirit was gone, but etched into the wall behind the coffin were fresh words, "The mother will rise again." The return of Maria. The following dawn, far away in a convent hospital, a nurse screamed. Room 13, empty for years, now had someone in it. Maria, alive. She was sitting upright in her bed, staring at the crucifix on the wall. Her once pale skin now glowed faintly gray, her eyes void of pupils. The doctors claimed it was a medical miracle. She'd awakened from a coma that had lasted 6 months, but the nurses knew better. She didn't eat. She didn't speak that night. They heard her whispering a lullaby, the same melody Father Edmund had heard beneath the altar. "Sleep, my child. Sleep, my sin." The blood moon ritual. As weeks passed, strange deaths began near the hospital. Nurses were found lifeless, their faces twisted in terror. Each body bore a burn mark on the forehead, shaped like a tiny cross turned upside down. Father Edmund, now visibly haunted, connected the dots. "She has returned," he murmured. "But it's not Maria anymore. It's what she carried within." The church archives spoke of a rare lunar event, the blood moon, approaching in 3 nights. The same night Maria's child was born, legend said that if a spirit of vengeance wasn't laid to rest before the blood moon, it would reincarnate, stronger, unstoppable. The final confrontation. Edmund prepared for one final exorcism. This time, at the old church, Maria was brought there under restraint. The moonlight bled crimson through the broken stained glass as the ritual began. Candles flared. The ground trembled. Maria's voice changed, deep, echoing, layered. You killed us, Father. Now feel what we felt. One by one, the crucifixes on the wall turned upside down. The holy water evaporated midair. Edmund screamed the final prayer, and for a moment, Maria's face softened, tears streaming as she whispered, "Forgive me, my child." A burst of blinding light filled the church. The walls cracked, bells rang by themselves, and a thunderous scream echoed across the city. When the dust settled, both Maria and Edmund were gone. All that remained was the child's coffin, open and empty. Epilogue. The Church of Whispers years later. Children playing near the ruins claimed to hear a woman singing. The melody was soft, soothing, and followed by a faint infant's cry. Locals built a cross at the site, hoping to silence the haunting, but on every blood moon, the cross bleeds, and the air fills with a lullaby no one dares to finish listening to. Monsoon mist stitched itself over Kolkata's rooftops as Ayan Khan, an independent sound designer, threaded a boom mic through the broken gates of St. Mary's. He wasn't a believer. He was a collector of noises people swore didn't exist. His brief, "Capture the singing ruin" for a streaming docuseries at 3:03 a.m. The hour locals called the mouth of night. Ayan pressed record. The church answered with breath, the long, hollow exhale of a building that had learned to grieve. Then it came, a lullaby, barely air, barely voice. Suja, mere bop. Suja. Ayan's headphones crackled. Beneath the song, a second signal pulsed in the sub-bass, too rhythmic to be random. He aimed the mic toward the collapsed apse, and the waveform on his recorder drew a climbing pattern like a staircase. Not a melody, he whispered. A pattern. He should have turned and left. Instead, he stepped onto the first cracked tile and felt something answer from below. Like a drum under the skin of the earth, somewhere in the darkness. A small, wet laugh, the last witness across the city. Ruma woke from the same dream she'd had for years. A chair, a rope, and eyes like midnight wells. Time had silvered her hair, but not her fear. She kept a shoebox under her bed, the one with the rosary, a burnt ribbon, and a letter she'd never mailed. The letter was for Father Edmund, drafted the week he vanished, asking him a question she'd never dared ask aloud. What did you leave behind? At noon, her doorbell rang. Nisha Dutt, a true crime podcaster with two bright eyes and a stubborn streak. And Kabir Malik, a theology grad who read Latin the way others breathed, stood there, dripping rain and theories. We spoke to Ayan, Nisha said, waving her phone. He heard it, the lullaby. We think it's not just a song. We think it's a key. Ruma stiffened. A key to what? Kabir laid a photocopy on the table, a page from the Diarium Male Dictum, a 17th century Jesuit manual. In the margin, someone had scrawled in Portuguese, Cantilena Porte, the lullaby gate. A ritual cadence used to open or bind infans severus, a wrathchild spirit born in sin and denied rest. Ruma looked at the page, at the notation that curved like a mother's arms. She used to hum when she couldn't cry anymore, she said, voice breaking. Maria. She hummed to the air where her child should have been. Then she didn't hum, Nisha whispered. She called. Nurse, Julie's ledger. They found the ledger in a rusting locker at a shuttered clinic near Toretta Bazaar. Pages eaten by damp, ink bled into faint rivers. On a surviving spread, a night shift nurse named Julie S. had written in block letters to stop her hand from shaking. 3 March. Premature birth. Infant alive. Order received. Report stillborn. Instruction, bury in old yard behind city church. Amended. Transfer remains to St. Mary's crypt for binding. Anomalous. Infant did not remain still. Breathing faint. Outcome. Unknown. At the bottom. A final line. The lullaby stops the breath. The prayer holds the gate. If sung backwards, it returns what was taken. Kabir swallowed. She's saying the melody has two faces. Sung forward, binding. Sung backward, summoning. In the recording, Nisha said slowly. The second layer, the sub-bass, was inverted. Ruma closed her eyes. Then someone is already singing it backwards. He archivist of bones to understand a haunting, you trace its teeth. They found Brother Gabriel, a hunched archivist who cataloged relics without altars, objects cut loose when churches fell. He dragged out a crate stamped with the crest of St. Mary's and unspooled an inventory list. 3 minor relics, 1 infant shroud, 2 candle trays, 1 iron nail from an anchorite cell, and he stopped. A vertebra. From whom? Kabir asked. Brother Gabriel's glass blue eyes lifted. The note only says, Parvulus. The little one. The crate was empty. Stolen? Nisha asked. Gabriel shook his head. Borrowed. By a priest who never returned it. Name unreadable. Ink washed out. Ruma touched the lip of the crate. The wood was cold. The cold had a direction, pointing back across the city like a compass needle to a place no longer on maps. Her mouth moved before she could think it. The old city churchyard. The yard of 2 graves they reached at dusk when shadows choose their owners. Grass had chewed the stones to lumps, and banyan roots braided everything into one crooked fist. Kabir's EMF meter clicked, not with the nonsense of ghost hunters, but with the steadiness of buried wire. There, Nisha said, kneeling by a child-sized depression. A string of blackened beads lay half-exposed in the soil. Ruma took out the shoebox rosary. Its missing half gleamed in the dirt like a tooth that had finally found its family. They dug with their hands. The earth smelled like rain and iron. Ayon's voice crackled from Nisha's phone. She'd kept his call open. I'm routing the church feed through. The lullaby's back. Louder. Ruma's fingers found cloth. She tugged gently and lifted a small bundle, no heavier than a winter scarf. The shroud was stained, the knot tied with care and cruelty. She opened it enough to see what lay inside. Not boned out of vermilion layette, stitched with a cross, folded around a lock of hair, and a tiny string tag that read, Baptism deferred. Kabir stared. Decoy. Nisha's phone squealed with feedback. On the other end, Ayan whispered, Guys, there's a second voice at the church. Not the lullaby. A counter melody, lower, chanting. It's correcting the song. Who's there? Nisha asked out a pause. Then Ayan again, thinner, farther away. I think, Father Edmund. The line died, the hollow choir they ran. The storm ran with them. The church was a ribcage lit by lightning, and within its chest, candles flamed to life as though remembering their jobs. The knave's heart stood Ayan, headphones around his neck, eyes too wide. Next to him, a man in a scorched cassock, younger than he should have been and older than time. Father Edmund turned as if from a long corridor. It's taken me years to learn its grammar, he said softly, voice like pages turning in a cold room. I bound what I could, but you can't bind love, only rage. Ruma stepped forward. Where's Maria? A whisper from the dome above, like silk tearing. Here. She stepped from the north aisle, no longer a patient, no longer a victim, carrying her body the way a warrior carries a banner. Her skin held the moon as if it belonged to her. Where her pupils should have been, a slow red ember burned. Maria, Ruma said, tears surging. Child. Maria smiled, a mother's smile borrowed by a storm. You always called me child, but I am too now, and neither forgives. The floor vibrated, tiles shivering in their mortar. The lullaby rose from the stone, and beneath it, that counter song. The gate trying, once more, to close. Listen, Edmund said, turning to Kabir. Hear the cadence and the subharmonics? 4 beat, then a pause. That pause is a hinge. If we fill it with prayer, we can seal. A candle cracked. Wax spit onto Edmund's sleeve and hissed. Maria's gaze flicked to him. The air tightened. No more cages, she said. The mother tongue Nisha hit record. Ayan lifted the boom reflexively, every microfiber in the church trembling with sound. Kabir began to chant in Latin. Edmund joined, their voices weaving like 2 old roads finding each other again. The lullaby pivoted. What had been cradle-soft turned surgical. The sub-bass climbed, finding overtones nerves could hear, but minds could not. Ruma fell to her knees, palms pressed to the floor. Her lips moved, and the song that came out wasn't hers. Soja. Mire prawn. Soja. Maria's eyes flickered. For a moment, the ember thinned, and something human looked out. She took a shuddering breath. Ma. She whispered. Not to Ruma, not to anyone living. I can't feel where you end. The candles blew back as if slapped. The ember flared. The church rang like a bell struck underwater. Wrong door, Maria said, voice doubling. You keep closing the wrong door. Kabir stopped chanting. What door? Edmund's face fell. Not the child, he said, horror thawing in his throat. The sorrow. We keep binding the child. But it was her grief that opened the gate. We never closed her. Maria laughed, a bright, unbearable sound. At last, the binding of breath. Edmund pivoted, dragging a chalk circle into the dust with the heel of his hand, scrawling words that left no mark and every mark at once. Ruma, your voice, he said, not looking up. You held her when the church would not. You sing to her now, but for her. Not the child. Ruma's mouth trembled. She remembered the nights at the convent when Maria could only hum, how she'd held the girl's fingers and hummed back until dawn. She opened her lungs and poured out a tune she didn't know she remembered. No lullaby, no charm. A woman's wordless keening for the self she lost. The air changed. The lullaby faltered, tripped, tried to regain its footing and couldn't. Maria swayed, eyes flashing. A battle at a doorway no one else could see. Edmund's circle sealed with a sound like a lock learning its negative. Kabir added a line. Then another, geometry stitching grief into a shape grief could no longer escape through. Nisha's recorder popped. Dead. Ion's headphones filled with nothing. The church listened to Ruma and made that listening a wall. Maria screamed. The ember flared blinding white, then thinned to a coal again, shifting like breath in winter. She staggered toward Ruma and stopped inches away, trembling, a storm front deciding whether to pass. I remember, she said, one voice now. I remember my name when I wasn't a vessel. Ruma reached up, palms open. Then take it back. The ember guttered. For a heartbeat, everyone believed. What the city heard, every radio cut to static. Every phone buzzed once and died. The Hooghly rolled backward for the length of a single breath. In the maternity ward at SSKM Hospital, 20. Newborns cried in the same note and ceased in the same second. Under St. Mary's, something turned over, like a sleeper choosing another side. That a thin giggle rose from the crypt, high and delighted. A second lullaby answered, from the south wall, then the east, then the west, each slightly out of time, building a wheel that began to spin. Maria blinked. The ember steadied. 2 doors, she whispered. You closed one. A child's shadow crept up the apse like dawn in reverse and touched the cracked fresco of an angel. The angel smiled with too many teeth. Father Edmund went very still. Oh God, there were twins. The wheel of lullabies clicked once, twice, thrice, every turn faster. Ruma grabbed Maria's hand and felt not one pulse but 2, overlapping, racing. Ion stared at his dead meters, then at the air that thrummed like a turbine. Nisha looked up at the fresco and saw a second pair of infant eyes open where paint should have been flat. From the high dark, a new voice. No cradle song, no prayer. A child learning to speak for the first time and finding the word it liked best. Baba. The candles inverted, flames pointing down like spears. Somewhere in the city, a bell tolled 13 at the church doors slammed. The wheel spun so fast it became a ring of light. And in that ring, 2 small silhouettes stood hand in hand. They turned their faces toward the living and smiled. Suddenly, Neil and Mother Agnes were lifted into the air by an unseen force. Flames burst from the candles and engulfed their robes. Within moments, both were consumed by fire. Maria slumped lifelessly as the holy water fell from Father Edmund's trembling hands. The ordeal was over. Neil and Agnes were dead. Maria barely survived, but she never spoke again. The St. Mary's Sacred Heart Church was closed forever after that night, and Father Edmund, though he had performed countless exorcisms before, would never forget the first one where 2 souls were lost. And one broken girl became the vessel of her own child's wrath. Even today, those who pass by the abandoned church at night swear they can still hear a woman's scream, followed by the faint cry of an infant buried beneath the cold, holy ground.